Hey guys, welcome to the review show. My name's Austin. Wolfman stars Christopher Abbott and Julia Garner. Blake and his family are attacked by an unseen animal and, in desperate escape, barricade themselves in a farmhouse as a creature prowls the perimeter. Lately, I haven't been a big fan of Blumhouse. I just haven't really cared for a lot of their movies. Mostly, I started seeing the downfall for Blumhouse when it was more with Halloween Kills. Not a terrible movie, but then Halloween Ends came out. I'm like, this is god awful. And next, we got Megan, which everyone apparently really liked. I didn't really enjoy it that much. I don't think it was the worst thing in the world, but it wasn't very good. Five Nights at Freddy's, Afraid. I wasn't Night Swim a Blumhouse movie. I don't know if that one was, but I mean, even like what was the one with the bear? Why am I blanking it? It came out last year. Imaginary. That had no imagination. Now we have a movie called Wolfman, which I believe was going to be part of that, Tom Cruise MonsterVerse movies that they were doing, but then got canceled because that Tom Cruise Mummy movie did terrible. It wasn't the worst movie, but it did terrible. With everything I mentioned around this movie, was not very looking forward to it. But I actually had a decent time with the movie, not a satisfying time, but the movie had me hooked for a very long time. I really liked the opening for this movie, how it was really building up of the atmosphere for this. And I was like, okay, all right, we're not really jumping into the direct, like, cliche Blumhouse jump scare type of movie here. I'm like, okay, you're building some form of actual characters. Cool. Really got you invested right away with the characters, and it made you feel kind of afraid of this creature without even knowing. I mean, going based off the title of the movie, a wolf man, like the unknown of this identification of a wolf man. Really, that's what was really scary. And you don't even, it takes a bit to see the design of this creature very late into the movie, which I really liked. It kept it in the shadows. A lot of it was revealed either like a quick movement of this creature, or like there's like a fence and actually see like like cold breaths appear over it, letting you know like that thing is there. I'm like, okay, cool. We're actually doing some cool, smart things. And next, I did figure out also that the director of this movie did Invisible Man, which I haven't seen, but I've heard really good things about. You have a dad who has a past with his father who mostly grew up in the forest. They didn't really have a good relationship between one another. Not really terrible, but not also great. And the movie makes a very clear point very on that he didn't want to be like his dad, and like he wants to do things very differently. He wants to teach his own. He wants to treat his daughter very own differently, his own kid. And I was like, okay, cool. And of course, if you've seen the trailer, he's the one that will be turning into this wolf. And throughout this whole entire movie, it's a transformation, becoming this creature, this monster that you never wanted to become. And you can see throughout the film that he's kind of starting to lose his mind and starting to break down, and he's trying to fight off whatever is happening to him because he got scratched, and that's how the infection starts and how you start turning into a wolf man. I thought that story worked very well with one another. Now, with that being said, that's all that the movie is. That it's a slow burn of him turning into this wolf. And after a while, that got really old, and I was like, okay, can we get to some of like the actual scary bits of the movie? Because even though I don't like the cliche horror films, I still was expecting some form of horror to it, and there wasn't really anything really there. And when you see the full transformation of him becoming a wolf, it's kind of underwhelming. And it's like, oh, okay, if someone showed me a picture of this wolf, I would not be able to guess like, hey, that's a wolf. I would honestly think of the guy from Prometheus who got infected by an alien. That's who I would really honestly think. Next, the characters started to kind of slightly fall off later on in the film. Like you have this mom who's played by Julia Garner, who is fantastic. By the way, even though I'm not really attached to her character, which is kind of like the big issue of the film, is that you kind of don't get that emotional attachment with her character besides the dad and the daughter. I thought that was very great, but her character just felt left out. And even then, she was great in the role. She kind of just added nothing to the film, and I thought they were going to add a little bit more to that. Because the movie did bring up that she had a hard time connecting with her daughter and all that, and but they don't really do anything with that. She kind of is kind of honestly a terrible mom. Like she would leave her kid with this man who starts gnawing on his arm. She doesn't know that her husband is turning into a wolf. But I wouldn't leave my kid with this person who is just starting to turn into a cannibal, really, and starting to nom on themselves. So it's like that's probably not really the smartest thing to do. Like that's pretty stupid, especially when you're trying to build a relationship with your daughter. That's one way to destroy your relationship, especially if something happens to her. Her character doesn't really go anywhere, and a lot of the film is just kind of hanging out in this house and just hearing creaks. I mean, like the movie does have some interesting moments, more with the dad's transformation into this wolf. Like they do this creative idea of like every once in a while switching it to his POV, not like a first person POV, but more like it's just like the camera changes. It's basically color form away to give it a different aesthetic of like view in a way to his perspective of how he sees the world. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. Is that going to go anywhere? Not really. It doesn't really add that much, but I'm like, okay, that was kind of interesting. I wish you could have done more with it. He did something interesting with his like hearing, where like when he first started to figure out what is happening to him, he could start hearing big loud footsteps around the house, and they kind of do something fun and interesting with that. I'm like, okay, that's kind of funny and like cool, but that's all the movie really is. It's just like these big loud noises, and the characters are walking around the house every once in a while, and next towards like the end of the second act and the third act, that's where everything kind of goes down. And I'm like, okay, I wish this kind of happened quicker, because the pacing is really bad in this movie. When your movie is like 90 minutes long and it feels like a 2.5 hour movie, that's a big problem. Well, very well performed, even from the girl, like the daughter in the film. I can't remember the actor's name, but she does a very good job in this movie. And like I really liked her. Again, I really liked her bondage with her and the dad in this movie. They kind of like have a Jaws moment, really. And what I mean by a Jaws moment is like when Brody and his son like his son starts copying his fate, like doing whatever Brody is doing his dad in that movie. They kind of have like their own little thing like that in this movie where they can bond over. I'm gonna give Wolfman a C minus. Had a good time with it. Really got invested in the characters. Really liked its opening, and it had an interesting setup. But after a while, it just starts dragging, and it takes too long to get to the point that it wanted to have towards the end of the film, and it just lacked a lot of character developments with the mom and its daughter, and may make you really question the mom in a way, especially her parenting skills. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Like always, I'll see you guys next review. Bye, guys.